Bore and welcome to another week of Crimewatch Live.
Today, detectives want help after a gruesome discovery was made in the River Stour in Suffolk.
It's really important that we identify our victim. This was somebody's loved one, this was somebody's family member. And until such time as we can identify them, we can't notify their loved ones.
It's a mystery police need your help to solve. Welcome to Crimewatch Live.
It's been jamming the switchboard both here and at the incident room on that case of Welling Garden.
Just to remind you, this was the abduction and radio drop campaign and the handgun debate. Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. 12 people rang in, giving the same those fantastic results.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning and for all your calls so far this series. Last Monday, police asked for help identifying some of the men they believe were involved in the Southport, Cleveland and Merseyside public disorder. They launched a portal with details about a large number of outstanding suspects they wanted to find across the country.
Well, since our appeal, nearly 1,500 people have visited that and left valuable information, which is incredible. And you can still access that portal by visiting police.uk/disorder-appeal, or just scan this QR code at the bottom of your screen with your phone's camera and that will take you straight there.
Today, after family man Raju Madhwadia was killed in Leicester in December 2021, police want to appeal to his local community to come forward with information about what happened to him.
Also, how a thief coughed up to more crimes than the police could have expected.
Just want to wait there a second.
He told us, I think it was around about 70 offences, breaking into 2 to 5 properties a day when he needed to, really living a very chaotic lifestyle.
Our team are waiting to take your calls, so if you do have any information, then please get in touch. You can scan our QR code with your phone's camera and that'll take you to our website where all of our details can be found. Or, of course, you can call us on 08000 468 999. You can text us on 63399. Just start with the word crime, leave a space and then write your message. Or you can email us. That's the address. It's cwl@bbc.co.uk.
First this morning, how an incredibly brave officer found himself running towards danger with life-changing consequences. This has some strong scenes throughout.
Police in Brighton, it is challenging. Sustaining a serious injury is certainly not part of the job. You just do your best to mitigate away from serious consequences. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that. I literally didn't know what hit me. It was a Sunday. Started off by doing administrative tasks. And then in the evening, I was out patrolling in an unmarked vehicle. The police had received several calls about a large group of people who were committing random offences around the seafront area of Brighton. And as I was in the town centre, I went looking for them. As I was stationary at traffic lights, I encountered a group who were likely to be the people involved. I saw a group of around 8 surrounding 2 other people. Those 2 other people were bleeding, quite obviously. I reported immediately back on the radio. Lucky enough, both seeming victims broke free from the group and ran about 30-40 metres up the road towards a train station. But unfortunately, the main suspect sprinted up the road and looked to do some sort of flying karate kick at one of the victims and grab the other one and start punching him again. I knew that there were police officers nearby. I knew that there was CCTV coverage nearby. I knew at that point that I had to immediately intervene. I ran towards that group. I pushed members of the group out of the way to get to the main offender. I then put them on the floor and got on top of them to try and handcuff them. The adrenaline was pumping. What I didn't see coming was one of his associates who took a running punch at my face. All I felt was a massive, heavy impact to my face, but I didn't know what. I literally didn't know what hit me. Just as I looked up, I got 7 more strikes. I don't know whether I lost consciousness, but I was certainly dazed. And from that point onwards, it was what I thought was a fight for my survival. Wasn't going to let go of him, wasn't going to give up. And it moved very quickly to right, if I can hang on to him long enough, I know people are coming to help. We went in a bit of a tussle for quite a while, between me trying to get him to the floor, him getting back up again, getting him to the floor again. And lucky enough, 2 members of the public came to my aid. They came over and basically pinned him to the floor. I remember one of them getting punched in the face several times. So I deployed my spray, and it had an immediate effect. Within what seems like a couple of minutes, but I think was only around 10-15 seconds, more officers arrived. We managed to get control at that point. I didn't quite understand just how badly I was injured. I didn't think I even needed to go to hospital. Unfortunately, they confirmed I had several fractures to my eye socket and face. My partner was not expecting the level of black eye that I had, or the facial swellings. And my little one got very upset seeing my battered face, which was particularly difficult to deal with because my little one was scared of me, which cut really deep, and even thinking about it, it still cuts very deep. I returned to work. I spent, I think, about a week and a half at work, basically desk duties. There seemed to be a bit of a complication with my recovery, and somehow double vision came on. I think it took about 4.5 months for my brain to work out where my eye now was in my head, and for the double vision to go. So I'm as recovered now as I'm ever going to be recovered. I do look physically different. I've spent 30-odd years looking a certain way when I look in the mirror. That's now different, with my eye being sunk. You know, I'm at peace with what happened. I've moved on from it, despite the constant physical reminder, and I'm carrying on policing. So as a result of the incident, a panel seemed fit to nominate me for a National Police Bravery Award. Not only was I nominated for, I ended up somehow winning the Sussex Police Officer of the Year Award for 2023. This incident was also, I've been told, one of the contributing factors to why I received the award. Both of those, you know, extremely humbling to even be nominated, let alone, you know, win one of them.
A 19-year-old man pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm and was sentenced to a year in prison, suspended for 2 years for that attack. He also had to pay compensation and complete 120 hours of unpaid work in the community. And of course, we wish all the best to Sergeant Alec Barrett. Now, for our first appeal this morning, we're in Suffolk, where a picturesque stretch of river became an unlikely crime scene.
This is somebody's family member. This is somebody's son, father, uncle. There will be people out there who will be missing them. Until we know who this individual is, we really can't bring justice to them or their family.
On Thursday, 27th of August 2020, a local walker was taking a stroll next to the River Stour in the Suffolk town of Sudbury when they spotted some black bin bags.
They called one of the park rangers. They've gone down, they've recovered 2 bags which they found to be quite heavy. And as they're doing that, they've noticed quite a strong chemical smell coming from the bags. They've opened one of the bags, and it's at that point that they've seen inside when a call like this comes in, the first thoughts are, is this what we really think it is? A report of what appear to be human bones can often be found to be animal.
But closer analysis revealed that the remains were human, and there was evidence of foul play.
In the first bag were what we believe to be the arms of an individual, but also within the bag was a boots carrier bag. Within that boots carrier bag were a number of stones to weigh these bags down. And then when we moved the second bag and the legs were found, the smell came from what we initially described as air fresheners, the type of thing that you would see in public toilets to potentially block any smell. There were around 27 quite deep lacerations caused probably by a heavy-bladed weapon, but not actually a cause of death.
Suspecting other remains may have been dumped nearby, police called in specialist dive teams.
We needed to search the river thoroughly. As a result of that, they found another bag. Within there were some further bone fragments. We had the bone down to the side of the nose and then a small part of the jaw, and within the jaw we had 2 teeth.
DNA testing showed they were all from the same person. A post-mortem examination couldn't pinpoint the cause of death, but the police say it was an adult man with an athletic or muscular build.
Police ran DNA checks to see if the victim was on a missing persons register or on the national DNA database, but there was no match.
We could tell that it was an adult approximately 5'6" to 5'9" in height. What we were then able to do is start to look at carbon dating and start to look at using the teeth that we had, but also sections of the bone. What we found is that our victim was in their late 50s to early 60s, born pre-1955 to early 1950s. They were likely to be of North European ancestry. They were likely to have had blue-green eyes and at birth likely to have had blonde hair.
Police looked at reported sightings and established the bags had been deposited in the river 7 to 10 days before being spotted. But carbon dating led them to believe the death was not recent.
We believe the date of death was between 2008 and 2012, and that's quite significant because there's quite a long pause then between death and between the discovery of the remains.
Police suspected the man had been murdered and his body stored elsewhere for a number of years before being dumped in the river.
The feet were pushed up towards the shins and the arms were bent in. So they may have been put into quite a tight confine to try and obviously cover up the murder. It's difficult to say whether or not this is definitively linked to organised crime. What we do know, from the state in which the remains were found, with the skull appearing to have a number of injuries, that this was a serious level of violence that was used against the individual. when they were killed. And that could attribute to organised criminality.
So far, the identity of the victim and his killer remain a mystery.
It's really important that we identify our victim. What I'm really conscious about is this was somebody's loved one, this was somebody's family member, and until such time as we can identify them, we can't notify their loved ones. The other thing that identifying the victim will do is it will allow us to understand their lifestyle and allow us then to look at those other lines of inquiry that may generate to establish what may have happened to them, who may have been responsible for it, and to ultimately bring those people to justice.
Well, I'm joined now by Detective Superintendent Mike Brown from Suffolk Police, who you saw in the film there. Good to have you with us, Mike. I mean, this is a really gruesome discovery in a normally very quiet community. Take us back to the start. When were you first alerted?
So this was August 2020, and we received a call from one of the park rangers who'd been asked by members of the public to come and take some rubbish out of the river, what they thought were just black bags. What they found inside of those bags was some smaller carrier bags. Inside that was some half bricks, some stones, some air fresheners, and unfortunately then some human remains. But you're right, it's a beautiful area of the Suffolk countryside and completely unexpected.
Yeah, a really shocking thing to have happened. What were you able to find out about the victim?
So through carbon dating, DNA and ancestry, what we were able to understand is that they were likely born pre-1955, so they would have been late 50s, 60s in age. We believe that they would have been white North European male, probably born with blonde hair, but this may have darkened over time, and had blue-green eyes. And again, from the remains that we found, they were probably quite physically fit in terms of their stature.
Now, the victim had some significant injuries to his skull, didn't he?
Yeah, we carried out a huge search of the area, as you can imagine, brought in resources nationally, dive teams, search dogs going through. And we actually recovered a smaller bag a little further down the river, and within that, we found a portion of the skull, and on the skull it had 23 separate injuries to it, so a significant number of injuries, but none of those were believed to have been the cause of death.
Gosh, and what about the bags in question? Is there anything of note about them?
Yeah, the bag I just mentioned there with the portions of skull, it was a blue bag, similar to that you'd find perhaps on a market stall, fruit and veg, so unmarked, quite cheap in what it was. But the other bags we had were a little bit more distinctive. We had a company that was local both to Sudbury and surrounding areas called Thingamybobs, one of their carrier bags, and we also had a Boots carrier bag. And what we were able to do from the logos on those bags, we were actually able to date them to around that 2008 to 2012 period.
So you actually have a pretty good idea of when the bags were dumped as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do. The community in Sudbury are really, really passionate about the river, about the walking areas, about keeping this clean. So we had a number of sightings and working with the community, engaging and getting the descriptions of them. We think it was probably a week to 10 days before they were actually recovered that they were put into the river.
And your working hypothesis, as it stands, is that the victim was actually killed sometime before all of this?
Again, yeah, through the dating that we've done, we think the victim actually was probably killed in that 2008 to 2012 period. So they've been stored for a very long time before being moved and put in the river. And it's really important to us to identify where exactly the remains were held before being dumped.
You also want to reiterate that you don't believe that this actually happened in the town of Sudbury itself.
Sudbury, this is so unusual for Sudbury to have something of this scale or this significance within it. We are on the borders with Essex, but there's a number of other opportunities, and the remoteness of this site would lead it, if there's people with any kind of knowledge or just looking for that opportune place to drop something without being seen, and it is so unusual for Suffolk and for Sudbury.
So, Mike, how can the viewers watching this morning help?
It's really, really important for us to identify our victim, to understand who they are. By doing that, we can look at their antecedents, the people around them. That may help us solve this crime, but also their family. They'll have loved ones, they'll have family members who we can then tell and we can then update. But again, if people have got that memory of somebody going missing around those times, or a location that they think may have been used to store it, that's who we want to hear from.
Mike, thank you so much. If you do have any details about this appeal to share with us, then please get in touch. The contact details are below or can be found using our QR code.
Now, one of the other BBC programmes that I make is all about scams and frauds, and we wanted to bring you some information about a scam crime wave that we've been seeing a lot of reports on and what you can do to protect yourself. I'm now with lawyer Lisa Webb to talk about what's known as employment scams. Lisa, welcome. Can you just explain what this type of scam is?
So often what we're seeing is people pretending to be either recruiters or companies looking for staff. They will either contact you out of the blue, offering you a job opportunity or an interview opportunity, or they'll put out adverts for jobs that might seem more lucrative than they ought to be. Very often, and I know we say this a lot, but they will look too good to be true, and that's because they usually are. But it's important to note that they will often be asking for money from you. And it might seem a bit weird that someone would do that, but they are very, very convincing. Sometimes they'll tell you that you might need to pay for equipment in order to start a job from home, for example, a laptop or a phone. They might say that you need a DBS check that you have to pay for. Equally, if it's an overseas job, they might tell you that you need to hire an immigration lawyer or speak to a travel agency about getting flights abroad. So there are ways for them to convince you that you ought to be parting with some cash. Don't do it, because they will disappear and your cash will be gone.
And we can have a look, actually. This is an example. We literally got this. I got this on my phone this morning before we started talking. And this is the sort of thing it would look like. It's quite generic. It sounds like a great new job that they want to tell you about. And there's lots of people that are going to be looking for this. So what sort of signs should people be looking out for if a job advert they see might not be the one for them?
Well, like you say, with this one, it's very generic. They're saying, we want to talk to you about a job. They're not telling you what the job is. It means that they're not putting any effort into understanding who you are and what jobs you might be applying for. The other thing to think about is whether or not the company or the recruiter is genuine. So you can look companies up on Companies House to see if it's a real legitimate company that might be employing. Have a look at their websites as well. Look for legitimate contact numbers on websites, because it's really important that who you're dealing with is real. We've seen some really awful situations where people have lost quite a lot of cash. And in some cases, they'll even try and get you to phone premium rate phone numbers to get yourself an interview. Either you'll be left on hold for ages, or they'll actually go to the effort of going through an entire interview with you, maybe even up to an hour. You'll end up paying hundreds of pounds on a premium rate phone line for that.
That is so incredibly crafty. So by thinking you're having that job interview, in fact, the scammer just wants to keep you on there as long as possible to make money out of you. That is absolutely awful. Now, there's a lot of people that may be watching this. They think, you know what, I'm tech savvy. I use the internet every day. This isn't going to happen to me. But unfortunately, this can and does happen to everyone.
It can happen to anyone, and it's really important to note that scams are becoming much more advanced, much more sophisticated, and much easier to fall for. They're looking for a moment of vulnerability. So even if the rest of the time you're super on the ball, if in one moment you just happen to not be paying attention, then that could be when they get you. But it's really important that you report any attempt to scam you. There's some really tricky stats out there from the England and Wales crime survey that suggests that only 13% of scams against individuals actually get reported to Action Fraud. So it's so important that everyone reports every time this happens. Please don't be embarrassed, because you will not be the first and you will not be the last.
Lisa, that is so important to stress that exact point. Thank you. And if you have been affected by any of these scams, so easy to be done, you can find help and support on our website.
Now, a thief who was given a second chance but chose to throw it away.
Hello, mate. Just want to wait there a second.
He was very well known to us as a residential burglary offender, extremely prolific.
I just couldn't believe the absolute devastation.
We had to be pretty quick. Smashed the window at the back, went in.
He knew what was coming. He knew the risk he'd taken.
I haven't even done it! Get on the ground! Get to the ground!
I've worked hard, my husband's worked hard for everything. Everything anyone's ever given me in my life, I've treasured. And it's just gone.
In March 2023, Sophie was returning from a holiday with her husband when they received a call to say their home
had been broken into. We have changed her name to protect her identity.
When I spoke to the police, she said, "Oh, did you have any jewellery?" And I said, "Yes, but it's in all different places." And she said, "Oh, I think they found it all." And that made me feel ill.
As Sophie had worked in Birmingham's jewellery quarter, she had quite a collection. The haul stolen was valued at £40,000, but it was not the cost, but the sentimental value that most affected her.
I had been given rings from my grandmother, her engagement ring and wedding ring, and that's gone. It means nothing to the criminal. They just take it and sell it for whatever. They have no idea of the value that was to me. The house was so brutally vandalised. Mess everywhere, every cupboard, every drawer. There was nothing that they didn't open. It wasn't a quick dash in and grab whatever you see on the dressing table. They actually obviously had time to find it all. My beautiful home that was my castle, my safety place, it's just become a place that I don't want to be anymore. I never want to feel this vulnerable ever again.
Although Sophie's house had been turned upside down, police weren't able to recover any forensic evidence.
The offender clearly had made an effort to make sure they didn't leave a breadcrumb, didn't leave anything for us to look at, no fingerprints, no CCTV, no evidence at all, really. We'd have to start looking at other cases to see whether we could link it that way.
As different policing teams within the force compared notes, they established this offence was one of a series.
We can see commonality with methodology, maybe using a pillowcase sometimes to take stuff out of the address. Quite unusual because they were in the daytime, time of day, how they get into the house. Let us know this is the same person doing this.
Another burglary police believed was linked had happened a few weeks before Sophie's break-in, just 10 miles away.
A daytime offender looking for items of high value, mainly jewellery.
But at this address, the burglar made a crucial mistake by leaving something behind, providing vital evidence.
While the officers are there, there's a forensic examination that takes place. They find a phone, and that's been left there by the offender.
Finally, the breakthrough officers needed.
There's a really good chance that you're going to get some good evidence from a phone, obviously a treasure trove of digital evidence, but to see one that's been left at a crime scene is very unusual.
Police conducted forensic work on the device.
So we're able to do checks on the DNA, on the phone. We can do subscriber checks to see actually who the phone belongs to.
And both confirmed the phone belonged to a man named Craig Toombs.
Craig Toombs was very well known to us, extremely prolific with extensive convictions for this type of offending.
Police knew that Toombs was a drug user and needed to steal to feed his cocaine habit. As burglaries sharing his trademarks were scrutinised, more evidence was uncovered.
There was a glove that had been left close to a crime scene, so when we sent that in for examination, it came back with some DNA to Craig.
Evidence was mounting. Realising his phone was in the hands of police, Toombs was proving elusive. But officers managed to link him to a car.
That vehicle was then seen at an address, and we were able to go to that address and locate him, rather than sort of sit back and wait.
Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest on suspicion of burglary, mate. Suspicion of what?
He was charged with 3 burglary offences, but was suspected of many more. His string of offences identified Toombs as a potential candidate for a restorative justice programme.
We work with non-violent, sort of drug-addicted, residential burglary offenders to try and break them free from that cycle of prison crime and drugs.
To take part, Toombs had to admit to all previous offences.
He told us around, I think it was around about 70 offences in total.
These are like the areas where you want to be as a burglar. We had to be pretty quick. Smashed the window at the back, went in.
One of Toombs's many confessions related to the burglary at Sophie's home.
I think I slid the panel up from the fence at the side. Broke the locker, the back door. Searched upstairs and downstairs. Took jewellery. In fact, there was quite a bit of gold from in there. I think we had to search like a spare room.
Yeah.
Quite a few boxes in. We had to search through all the boxes and there's quite a lot of jewellery in there.
Craig told us about quite a serious cocaine addiction, which would be £500 to £700 a day at his peak, breaking into 2 to 5 properties a day when he needed to, really living a very chaotic lifestyle, treating burglary like a job. There's a whole wealth of information he was giving us.
He even revealed where he'd hidden much of his stash.
Craig had pillowcases of property spread everywhere, war medals, MBEs, antiquities, watches, jewellery. I think literally 60 pillowcases of stuff came back to us, which was a big task to go through, work out who that belonged to, get it back to those victims. And yeah, just demonstrated that Craig was highly motivated. He'd had enough. He was stuck in this vicious cycle of crime and he wanted to change his life and wanted to take part in this process.
At this point, Toombs's sentence was on hold, as long as he met the strict bail-like conditions imposed as part of the scheme.
He's got to wear a GPS tag. He's got to have a phone that he keeps charged and contactable on 24/7. He's got to abide by a curfew, and we're able to give Craig the chance to show that he wanted to change his life.
But Craig Toombs didn't take the lifeline offered to him. On the 19th of March last year, police received a report of a burglary at St Nicholas Church in Kings Norton.
They'd smashed a stained glass window, gone in and stolen a load of high-value sort of antiquities and other items from inside.
Police checked the CCTV from outside the church.
There was CCTV of the offence showing a vehicle pulling up to commit that offence, and one of the investigators on that team realised that the car had quite a unique sticker on the back of it.
And this rang a bell with officers. The car Craig Toombs drove had a similar sticker. Investigators then checked his GPS tracker.
Some of the data that was coming through from Craig didn't look quite right. I'm satisfied when I reviewed it that he was trying to manipulate that data. We were able to narrow down quite specifically where he was. When the actual burglary took place, we were able to show that his tag was there when that happened. So we were just fortunate that the technology was strong enough to allow us to show that although he'd made an attempt to deceive that tag, it hadn't worked.
On the 23rd of March last year, police managed to arrest him after pulling over his car.
Yes, mate.
Once he realises that he's been connected to that church burglary, that's when he starts to play up.
You're trying to drive off. Can you get off?
Bit of resistance, and the officers have had to sort of use force.
Look at you, get I haven't even done.
He knew what was coming. He knew the risk he'd taken.
Toombs had broken the conditions of the scheme, which meant that he would be sentenced for all the offences he'd admitted to.
And then that's when we have to reactivate the other criminal admissions he'd made for that. Becomes quite a complex sentencing process for him, given the scale of the crimes involved. So in total, he had over 70 criminal offences of burglary that needed to be sentenced when he went through the court process.
Toombs pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
He's received a far more substantial sentence than he would have done. But for me, crucially, we've resolved a lot of crime for the victims and just reinforced the point that if you don't follow the chance that's given to you by the courts on these programmes, there is a punishment that's there waiting for you.
I remember feeling a bit relieved, thinking, oh, thank goodness, at least they know who it is. I had a face, and I don't have to go round suspecting every person walking down the street.
Now, 41-year-old Raju Modwadia was described by his friends and family as a much-loved son, brother and uncle, but most of all, a loving father to his young son. Tragically, he was killed on December the 27th, 2021, but police still don't know what happened.
On Boxing Day in 2021, Raju Modwadia met some friends at a party on Hamilton Street in Leicester.
It is a very low-key gathering of friends in the street. They are stood out having drinks, chatting and just generally having a nice evening. And then at 11:20, he attends the local shop where he purchases some whiskey to take back to the gathering. Raju appears to become more intoxicated as the evening goes on. The atmosphere within the group appears to change slightly. And his friends try and help him. They book a taxi for him. And he is heard to say, "I'm going home now."
But Raju never got into the taxi. Just 7 minutes later, as his taxi drove by, he was seen on CCTV staggering across the road. He'd been stabbed 5 times.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
No.
No, tell me exactly what's happened.
Basically, we just passed from the street. We're working out, and we find someone in the floor. He's not breathing.
Raju was taken to hospital, where he died from his injuries.
The camera doesn't cover where the incident occurred. It is a route where pedestrians have access to and from that street. There is potential that another party could have been involved that we are yet to uncover. So the incident where he receives his fatal stab wounds has occurred in this small area here. This area is heavily residential. We're at Christmas time, people will have been visiting family, friends, and there are lots of windows and doors that open up onto this street. We're appealing for witnesses to come forward because Raju's family deserve answers to what has occurred in the street that night. They've lost a loved one, a son, brother and father.
Raju, also known as Karamuru, was just 41 when he was brutally attacked in the early hours of December the 27th, 2021. He was stabbed 5 times and left critically injured before that passerby found him unresponsive and called the ambulance. Now, police know Raju had attended a social gathering on Hamilton Street and he went to a local convenience store at 23:20 to buy some alcohol before returning to the party. Here's a map of where he was that Boxing Day night. Hamilton Street is a dead end to vehicles, but at the time of the attack, the area was still quite busy. And police believe there may still be people who could have seen or heard something who still haven't come forward. Detectives are also interested in hearing from the driver or any passengers within a light-coloured BMW 3 Series that night that was driving up and down Hamilton Street towards Evington Road. These people are potential witnesses and are not considered as suspects. If you know anything about this case, please do come forward. There's a £20,000 Crime Stoppers reward available for any information that leads to an arrest and prosecution, and you can contact them anonymously on 0800 555 111 or us on 08000 468 999.
Now, heavy machinery like diggers, tractors and even generators have become a popular target for thieves. I'm joined now by Detective Sergeant Chris Piggott from the National Construction and Agricultural Theft Team and Dave Luscombe from the Construction Equipment Association to talk about something called Rapid. Welcome to both of you. Thanks so much for coming in today. And before we talk in a bit more detail about Rapid, Dave, just how big a problem is plant and machinery theft?
It's a massive problem, Michelle. Hundreds of millions of pounds worth of equipment are stolen every year by criminals who seek to make significant profits from the theft and sale of these machines.
Just who's stealing the equipment and how are they doing it?
The criminals are members of organised crime groups who recognise the vulnerabilities in the sectors in which these operate, these sort of machines. So construction sites, farms, very difficult to secure, machine being used all day, all night, and the criminals seek to exploit this. They also exploit the fact that these things can be transported in plain sight. It's not the sort of thing you'd look at straight away, not registered like a car, so very easy to get to the ports to export and get out of the country very quickly and make massive profits.
Yeah, and Chris, you and your team, you're at the forefront of this crime wave, really, aren't you? Just how do you go about fighting back?
Well, there's a number of things we can do, but what's been really key to us is the Caesar scheme, the Caesar marking scheme, and the development of the Rapid app for police officers on the ground to be able to check this stuff, whether it be on the roadside, being moved, going through a port, and being able to find out who the owner of the vehicle is or the machine is.
So Dave, just tell us a bit more about this Rapid app then. Exactly how does it work?
So back in 2008, the construction and agricultural industries came together to fit the official marking scheme for the industry called Caesar. The distinctive triangular labels now are fitted to over 500,000 pieces of equipment and registered on a secure database. And that data is very valuable for law enforcement. The Rapid app gives quick online access to every police officer to be able to check that data to find out whether that machine is stolen. So effectively the Rapid app has put that database into the pocket of every police officer in the UK, as well as officers from National Highways and the Environment Agency, their enforcement officers. And what that translates to is more eyes scanning the roads, scanning sites, looking for this equipment every day, 24/7.
So Chris, you and your fellow officers, you came across a piece of equipment, what, you just bring up your phone and scan the QR code on the label?
Yeah, quite simply, use of a smartphone.
So you're scanning the code and then it brings up the information
Absolutely.
straight away?
So that will bring me up the details of the machine.
And so you've got the labels on the equipment here, Dave. Are there any other markers that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. The labels are quite a robust security vinyl, very difficult to remove. But if the labels are removed or damaged, there are a whole host of forensic identifiers all over the machine, right down to a chemical DNA level.
Chris, how has this helped your unit?
Since we were formed in January 23, we've managed to find £20 million worth of stolen assets that we've seized and recovered for the owners.
Wow, I mean, that's a huge number. It's great to hear that it's been such a success. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us more today.
Thank you.
Yeah, great success. Thanks for watching today, and don't forget you can catch us on iPlayer for up to 30 days after broadcast. Tomorrow, how an outrageous thief thought he could steal from a famous NFL player, but it didn't go the way he planned.
You've got the Hall of Fame ring on your hand now. I mean, would you agree that's you? You ain't got a twin brother, have you?
You never know in this world.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
You won't want to miss that. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time of 10:45.